Good morning, community. It's Marty and David.
Good morning.
We are missing the other M of the
Who are we missing?
Of the Mike and Marty show. Mike had some obligations this morning, so he will not be here. It's the last day of January. We've cruised.
We made it.
We made it. We cruised through January. It was a tough beginning to January, but we made it through. Last night was the full moon, the blue moon, the super moon. It was all
very moony.
Very moony.
I looked out actually at the moon and the snow, and it was pretty amazing.
It was very cool. I saw it this morning as I was headed to work. It was just starting to set. And I believe there was also supposed to be a little bit of an eclipse this morning, but you couldn't see it because the moon was setting. So we have a couple of quick local announcements to go through, and then we're going to go right to David, and he's going to talk about his latest and greatest production at the Opera House. Last week I talked to you all about there was a chili cook-off at the American Legion to benefit Our Place. I just wanted to give a shout out to the organizers of that event. I believe it was Tim Hardy with some help from his sister and probably family and probably many others. They ended up raising $1,300.
That is amazing.
That is.
For Our Place?
Yeah. On a Friday night, they had the band, shout out to Third Rail for donating their time and their music, and then shout out to the Legion for donating the space, so that all the money they took in went right to Our Place. So, speaking of lovely dinners that will benefit the community, the Bells Falls Rotary Club, which you're familiar with, David.
I am. We're both members.
We're both Rotarians, is having their annual spaghetti dinner on Saturday the 17th. It's held at the Moose Hall. It's handmade, hand-rolled by Rotarians, meatballs, homemade sauce, spaghetti, brownies, a la mode.
We wash first, though.
Yes, we follow protocol. So get your tickets from any local Rotarian or show up. Again, all of the money that is generated at the spaghetti dinner is put back into the community through community projects or through scholarship, goes into the scholarship fund. It's all put back into going back into the community. So now let's get right to business. You have a new production this year.
Indeed we do. We'll be producing Jesus Christ Superstar at the Bellows Falls Opera House after last year's Sweeney Todd, which was deemed a pretty reasonable success by the Opera House and our organization. So we're trying it again. We're excited to bring Jesus Christ Superstar. We found online, it said it is the first and last great rock opera of the 20th century.
I was going to say, it's definitely a kind of a switch from Sweeney Todd. It's kind of...
Instead of being Victorian, it's sort of 70s
hippie. Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
So it's although we're sort of upgrading a little bit to Burning Man, really.
So you're not getting it totally away from the dark theme, the theme of death.
Well, Burning Man is sort of today's hippie crazy.
There you go.
So, just for fun, I'll jump to costumes because the Burning Man work and that thematic stuff came out of costumes, and then I'll jump back and talk about the show as a whole. As I started looking at the show, it became clear to me in looking at the show, so it has Jesus and Judas and the priesthood of Jewish priests at the time and Roman authorities, Pontius Pilate, so on like that. And then it has the mob. And all citizens together. So we looked at all those different characters, and my thinking was the mob actually presents almost as a single person, as a character. It sings all of its stuff together, and similarly the apostles sing all of their stuff together, and we started thinking of them almost like schools of fish, that they would move as one, that they speak as one, and we started thinking about how to costume them in a way that would create this kind of collective whole. So the mob actually...
So that people can easily identify those are the apostles, or the costumes going to be similar?
Yep, there's a little bit of color coordination, there's a little bit of... they are very... So that's sort of an apostle look,
right here?
Almost over there. It's probably a little darker in terms of the bones and the piercings, but they're not really. The idea of sort of.
Kind of Mad Max-ish.
It is a little bit.
Yeah.
The other stuff is a little more. Do I have anything else? It's a little more hippie chic. I mean, there's a lot of more gowny stuff and drapey stuff, but a lot of jewelry, a lot of work in hair, a lot of tattooing. We're working off.
Now, are you making them get real tattoos, or
No, we have
I'm just kidding.
we have an NEYT collaboration. Sandy Klein is coming up and doing the costumes again, and she has a student working with her who is doing a lot of the tattoos and has an airbrush that she's working with also.
Wow.
But it's really strong, bold, large-scale tattoos, which will work from the stage. So the mob is this wild frothing, and for the mob, some of the people, to create mass for the crowd, we have heads on hands. So they might turn and move as a group and have, 3 heads.
Wow.
So there's a skirt coming off of that head and that head, and then there's a huge kind of giant fringed
So
off
this is
of all
going to
of the
be
costumes.
very, very, very visual.
It's a very visual. So this winged thing, sort of thing, was actually an inspiration for our pilot. Pilot is going to be about 7 feet tall and have.
I got a little preview last week. We got to go see some of the costumes after a Rotary meeting, and he's going to be on stilts.
He's going to be on stilts. Which is tough. There's a lot of levels, as you'll see in the set in a minute. It's an interesting navigational challenge, and we're working that out now as we speak. So, because actually there's a tilted floor. I'm sure it's impossible to see there, but because the rake of the floor is very shallow. But I tried last week walking on the stilts on the tilted floor, and he has yet to try it. I found it a challenge.
And you weren't even in full costume. I'm assuming
Right.
he's going to have a very flowing
So he's got a
costume.
huge costume with this giant collar, and it's built out of sort of hardened leather. It's a pretty potent piece of work. It's all sort of silver and white and black. It comes off of that idea. So the costumes are really where the spectacle lies. This huge mob, with everybody with 3 heads and this giant fringe. When they whirl, there's this the costume whips out, and
So you
there's
can-
this real sense of movement.
I was just
and
going to say,
mass.
so that the audience can almost. I'm going to guess you're going to get a sense. You're going to feel that movement.
Right, and it
gonna-
really is sort of School of Fish with all the little fibers just flying out and going. That's the idea. So there's a lot of movement and scale to that. The priests were based off of these sculptures that we found. They too are tall, but mostly because they have these huge headdresses. So a hat like this really is being made, and a hat like that. So they're in huge scale, say 3 feet wide.
Wow.
For the hats. It's all about this. Then one of our challenges was, if the priests are this huge image and Pilate is this huge image, and there's so much strength in the mob, what did Jesus and Judas have that pulls them? Because in a way they were intended to be very simple. We did not want to deck Christ out with some kind of crazy garb.
Right, because that wasn't.
didn't fit
Yeah,
right.
yeah.
So we're working on that. I'm not going to give it all away.
But so there's a juxtaposition between the over the top and then the.
And in a way, having Christ be much simpler calls attention in and of itself. But there's work with color, and that's probably where we're going to end up putting the strength for that. The set was designed to be a cross between a rock and roll stage and a mythic, almost Stonehenge space. So all these walls back here, this giant wall that's broken up, and these 2 walls, they're all just giant blocks of stone. So the stone, pieces of stone will appear like that. And it really does create, it isn't built yet, so we think that it will create this sense of biblical time and again, myth That level of scale, which I think works perfectly with rock opera. They're both about the same level of scale. You know, I could see putting on a crazy rock opera in the middle of Stonehenge if they would let you.
Right. They probably wouldn't. But
They won't.
You could ask, David. If
If
anyone could get it
anybody
done,
could
it would
get
be
permission,
you.
it wouldn't be the
you.
Royal National Theatre of England, it would be me. So there are some surprises in the set, but I don't want to talk about them.
Right, because
They're surprises.
surprises.
They're
We want the
surprises.
audience to be surprised. So here's my question. So you have a fairly somewhat simpler stage than Sweeney, but maybe not. And then you have these large groups of people, because how many people are in the mob?
So where last year Sweeney was a cast of 35, we're looking at a cast of 55.
Okay, so you've got 20 extra people. You have large costumes. So I'm going to just assume that presents a bit of a challenge with coordinating movement on stage.
With coordinating movement on stage and with space off stage. The wings in the Opera House, they're tiny little spaces left and right. They're not designed for 50 people and their props and their costumes and their stuff.
And the giant headdresses.
You know, last year for Sweeney we had Pirelli's wagon and grinders and moving stair units, and we managed to fit it. So what we've done is we've taped out this exact floor plan where we are in Main Street Arts, because we can't be in the Opera House yet for financial, because we can't afford it. And we're just rehearsing on the space. So we believe that since it's an exact replica, we'll fit, if we fit now. We are actually installing the platforms in our own space starting tomorrow. And we'll see what the dances we've choreographed start to look like on levels. I'm sure there will be some changes.
Is that kind of both the thrill and the challenge of these productions for you, is having this concept and figuring out how to make it work? And then I'm sure it's a work in progress as you go. Once things come up, you move to the Opera House. It worked do you find that it works at Main Street Arts and you get to the Opera House, you're like, ooh?
I'm sure there will be some changes. So in Main Street Arts, you know, we have a room. It is basically exactly the size of the set.
Oh, is it? Okay.
We just fit the set in there. So there's no vantage point. I can't back up from the set.
And see what it looks
because
like.
I'm on it when I'm standing in the room. So there's a balcony in the Opera House. What it'll be like to be looking at the set from up here as opposed to right there. I'm sure that I will see things that I have never seen, and that some of them will be good, some of them will not. But it is. I do like the challenge of trying to take these epic ideas and then make them come to life. I think that's the excitement. Sandy Klein, who is costuming, again, she's just a phenomenal creative partner. So we get to bounce ideas all day long, and I think that for me is the joy. And Ken Olson, who's our music director, to sit and I have a wonderful new choreographer, and to sit with all these people and go, how can we do this?
And I think from a perspective of the audience, and going to Sweeney Todd last year and seeing your other productions, Bat Boy, and seeing the Into the Woods that you did, you always deliver a fantastic show. And I can't encourage people enough to get your tickets now. I believe is there a preseason discount going on right now?
So is today still January?
Today's still January,
So
all day.
today, right, it goes through the end of January. There's a 10% discount there. There are group discounts available for 10 or more, and then there's another break at 20. But we're hoping the first Thursday is a reduced rate day designed to help anybody who wanted to see the show. I think the lowest price tickets are $10.
Oh, nice.
So $10 for what it is, for the amount of work and materials, and because the budgets for these things are substantial.
Oh, I'm sure they are. I'm sure that they absolutely are. And every time it's probably a bit of a gamble between what you'll get back and so again, really trying to emphasize to people, because was surprised last week. I was somewhere and we were talking about this event, and someone said, "Oh, I heard nothing about it." So it's amazing to me that
Well,
the
we're
word still
just
doesn't.
starting. We're 2 months
Right.
out.
But
So just now, posters are starting to go out. I think I've only put out, say, 4 posters, but in the next couple of weeks, we'll poster the area and we'll start really the media campaign.
media campaign. So we're the kickoff of the media campaign.
You are the kickoff, and we have articles coming out in papers, but they haven't come out yet. We're just doing a radio spot now. All the stuff that hopefully will.
And you're doing
people
it a
around.
little bit later this year. Was there a reason for that? Because usually it's the second weekend in March?
So
first
there
and
were
second
2
weekend?
reasons. We got a lot of feedback about too much overlap with the high school show.
Okay.
So one endeavor is to get some distance from the high school show, so people don't feel pulled between
the two.
Bellows Falls High School and our show. We did last year. Not only, you could see both because the high school show was on one of our weekends, but we had another weekend, so you could. And we brought a lot of people from our show to go see their show just for fun.
Just because, yep.
I think if it creates a little more space and people feel better. The other reason is Keene Lions Club has a huge show, The Little Mermaid, which opens next weekend. I think it runs the 9th, 10th, and 11th. Maybe that isn't next weekend.
No, I think
It's the week after
it
this
is.
coming.
Yeah, I think it is.
And we have a lot of people that work with our company that wanted to be in that show. One of the people in Superstar is playing The Little Mermaid.
Oh.
So by going to the end of March, it allowed them a chance to really do their show and then step in and really learn what we were doing.
And then coincidentally, because you're going the last weekend of March and the first weekend of April, you're actually having the show on Easter. Is that correct?
So we're not having it on Easter Sunday.
Okay, you don't have it that
because
day.
we don't have Sunday shows.
Okay.
But we are certainly
Easter weekend, I
all
should
of
have said.
we are. It's an Easter sandwich, and
Easter sandwich.
and it's interesting. The show it opened with a lot of controversy. It was banned by the Catholic Church. It tells the story of the Passion of Christ from the point of view of Judas, which is certainly not.
Which I didn't know. I didn't really. I'd always heard of Jesus Christ Superstar, but I don't really know that much about it. So I'm intrigued now.
So it opens the question of whether Christ was the Son of God or not. That is not a question. Judas, if you listen to Judas's songs, he is saying, "We used to call you a man. Are you, when did this whole thing start?" There are also a lot of events in the show that make you feel like Christ is not just a man. So I think it very carefully allows you to make your decision. And what it's about for me, what I'm trying to play around with is I'm in a weird way less concerned about the Christ story and exactly. I'm not trying to determine the answer to that story, what Christ was, what Christ wasn't. I think that we hear messianic tales in the modern world, people stepping forward and declaring themselves, or people hoping that there is something coming, or what. And I want people to not only look back, but also look at now and look forward at how do we determine when people come to us what they really are? What is it that captivates us? How do we know? How would we know? And I think that the show pushes at that in a good way. And
kind of questioning, making people question things, maybe question things they've always known, or just even just getting a different perspective.
Right. What is it that attaches us to mythic figures, people that step forward, and what do we want from those people? And how do we know if what they're promising is what we are going to get and what we really want? and
Which kind of seems apropos for our times.
which seems apropos for our time.
But we won't go any further than
So,
that.
and I will say that there's, and the music's unbelievable.
And the music was Andrew Lloyd Webber.
It's Andrew Lloyd Webber. I personally think it's the best thing he ever wrote by
is-
some distance. I think it's iconic for people that grew up when I grew up. Most people I know listen to the album at some level of obsession. So we had people show up to auditions. They didn't need to look at anything.
They
They
knew-
just
oh,
sung
interesting.
every line, every
wild.
word, just straight.
Because so it came out in the 70s, right? Is that what
It
you
came
said?
out in the 70s.
Okay,
yeah.
so I kind of, that's probably why I have it. Early 70s? Was it early 70s?
I think it was 72, 73.
Okay,
but
'cause I
don't
have like
hold
a-
me to
I have
that.
like
That
a
is-
vague-
I know I should know all those things,
Which
and
is
I don't.
probably, I was young at the time, but I can remember, I would have had older siblings, and I can remember, like, I probably heard the soundtrack, probably heard the
Probably
music.
I don't know how to
'cause I have
love
like
him,
a,
and so never
yeah.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah,
blah,
yeah.
blah, 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 blah.
So I think that from that kind of perspective, it'll be interesting to see, because I didn't, kind of heard it. It was there, grew up around like when it was, but I'm very intrigued to actually see the story. Like I had never seen the same thing with Hair. I had never seen the play Hair until a few years ago. I'd, heard
What'd
the
you
music
think?
from it. I thought it was great. Saw it in New York, off Broadway.
It's such for me, that show doesn't really have much of a plot. I mean, I don't think it has a real plot, but it has amazing music and some interesting sort of mini stories
Yes, yeah.
tucked inside it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think we're going to be doing Hair soon.
Take on this
Not
one first.
because
and
I
then
don't like it, but we certainly won't be doing the nude scene.
I was going to
in
say that
Bellows
might be a little bit pushing the
A
edge.
little bit edgy.
Yeah. yeah.
Although, for what it's worth, we're doing a production of Equus this summer at Main Street Arts at our as part of the theater festival at our home space, which is typically done with a nude scene, which we won't be doing. But it's a pretty edgy piece of dramatic work. But come see Jesus. We had 70 people show up at auditions. People driving from north of White River, from past Manchester, out in that direction. People from just all over the place. It's very exciting to have that kind of interest.
That's very, very exciting. And it was probably hard to narrow it down. Was it hard to cast it down? Or
So honestly, people have, for their own life circumstances, pulled back. My commitment for these shows is if you want to be in it, you're in it. So, and maybe some people, they drop because they wanted to be, there are definitely people who wanted to be Jesus or wanted to be Judas, and they didn't get those roles, and so they said, thank you, but that's what I was shooting for. So we're down in the mid-50s because people said either this isn't the role I wanted, or because they just looked at their lives and said, you know what, I'm just too busy.
So what's the time commitment to someone that's doing this show?
We do 4 rehearsals a week at roughly 2.5 to 3 hours a rehearsal. And that's during the slow time, as we get right up to
Oh, ramp.
showtime. And that includes no homework, no line memorization, no studying, no anything. So it's a
time commitment.
pretty substantial time commitment.
And you started, when did you start like really kicking in? It was after the first of the year? Are you kind of
January 3rd.
January 3rd? And now you're just into ramping up. When will you be able to get into the theater?
We are going into the theater March 8th for the first time. We'll
Wow.
be starting to build in the theater in a week or so. So the set will be under construction during regular working town hall hours, which doesn't cost us anything to be in there. But when we do rehearsals in there with the whole group, it starts to get expensive, and we just can't afford it.
Right. And you have to, do you have to put the stage has to be set back so the movie screen
can
can
run,
come down.
curtain can close, all that. Last year we simply had to pay the money because Sweeney Todd, for any of you that went, it had a huge revolving center
stage,
and
yeah.
there was we couldn't build it twice. We had to build it right there. And then we had to use it to rehearse, or we would have never known.
Right.
what
Because there were
was
so many
happening.
components to that stage.
Right, and it's spinning while things are happening, and you have to climb up it, and you have to, way too complex.
So this one a tiny bit easier from that
Well, we can
perspective?
literally set it up just the platforming at Main Street Arts and then just move it. But yeah, spatially it's much simpler. It never changes.
Never changes. Oops. So my one last question is, because we're actually running out of time, and we'll reiterate the times of the show, but have you even thought ahead to what next year's production will be, or is that a total secret?
So I'm looking at 2 productions right now. One is Rent, and the other one is
Rent is so
Pippin. I'm actually leaning Pippin. It would be a collaboration if we do it, I hope, with NECA down in Brattleboro, and we would integrate circus heavily into it. I'm going to be meeting with Serenity Fortune, who's one of the, I think, 2 artistic directors. Anyway, she's one of the founders of that organization, and we'll be talking about that. Rent, the only other piece of it is there is a desire to do something a little more family friendly that all the kids in the family can come to, which Pippin is closer
Fits that
than
bill.
Rent.
Yeah.
So also we looked at Fiddler, on the roof, but
Fiddler is so fun.
people feel like it's so done.
It is.
It's still a wonderful play.
You know, I think that you could put a new spin on it. I really have
That's
faith
a
in
tough
that.
one to spin.
Yeah, but
Fiddler
I still think-
needs, it's not like we're going to do the modern dress production of Fiddler.
Why not, David? So anyway, Jesus Christ Superstar opens March 29th at the Opera House. It runs March 29th, 30th, and 31st at 7:30. On March 31st, there's also a matinee. And then April 5th, 6th, 7th at 7:30, and then April 7th, there's a matinee. Get your tickets now, but if you get them by the end of the day, you save 10%. They can go to mainstreetarts.org. Easy to order online.
Easy to order online.
Online.
Tickets right there. Don't miss it.
It's going to be fun.
Epic is the word.
We'll hopefully have you back maybe closer to production with maybe some film
Yeah, and we
clips
can
or
do some
something.
shots. Actually, Fact TV, God bless Fact TV, is coming tonight to start taking some footage of us in rehearsal.
Perfect.
And maybe we can share that when we come again.
Yep, awesome. Bye, community.
Bye, community.
That's it, folks, for the feed. Be sure to catch us every Wednesdays at 7:30 a.m. Also, find us on Facebook at Fact TV, or tell us what you think. thefeed8@gmail.com. And don't forget to watch the feed online at www.fact8.com.